Most people think if they haven't planted their garden by spring, they've missed their chance. That's one of the biggest gardening myths out there. In reality, June can be one of the most productive planting months of the entire year. The soil is finally warm. Seeds germinate faster. Young plants establish themselves quicker. And many vegetables actually perform better when planted in June than they do in the cool, unpredictable weather of early spring. But what makes June even more exciting is that you don't need a huge backyard or perfect conditions to grow food successfully. Several of the crops on today's list thrive in raised beds. Some grow beautifully in containers, and a few can even handle partial shade, making them perfect for gardeners who don't get all-day sunlight. So whether you're planting in a backyard, on a patio, beside a fence, or in a small corner that only gets morning sun, there's still plenty of time to grow an amazing harvest. In fact, some of the crops on today's list can go from seed to harvest in just a few weeks. Others will continue producing food long after summer reaches its peak. Plant number 3 grows so quickly that many gardeners harvest it before they expect to. Plant number 6 is one of the most forgiving vegetables for beginners. And plant number 8 can keep producing food for months from a single planting. Before we begin, tell us in the comments. Have you started planting yet? Or are you just getting your garden going? And if you love growing your own food, homesteading, self-sufficiency, and practical gardening tips, don't forget to subscribe to Primal Gardening. Now let's get planting. Plant number 1, bush beans. If you've never grown vegetables before, bush beans are one of the best places to start. They're productive, they're fast-growing, and they're incredibly rewarding. One of the biggest reasons bush beans make this list is because they absolutely love warm soil. Unlike some vegetables that prefer cooler spring temperatures, beans often sit and struggle in cold ground. But when planted in June, they seem to leap out of the soil almost overnight. That's because the warmer temperatures create exactly the conditions they want. Many gardeners are surprised by how quickly they see results. One week the garden bed looks empty. A few weeks later, sturdy green plants are filling the space. Not long after that, you're harvesting fresh beans straight from the garden. And unlike pole beans, bush beans don't need complicated supports or tall trellises. They're compact, manageable, and perfect for beginners. That's especially useful if you're gardening in raised beds, containers, or small backyard spaces. Another reason they're so popular is reliability. Bush beans are one of those crops that consistently reward even inexperienced gardeners. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need years of experience. You just need warm soil, regular watering, and a little patience. While they perform best in full sun, bush beans can still produce respectable harvests in locations that receive partial afternoon shade, especially during hot summer weather. In fact, in extremely hot climates, a little shade can actually help reduce stress on the plants. And once harvesting begins, you'll quickly understand why gardeners love them so much. Fresh-picked beans taste completely different from store-bought beans. They're sweeter, more tender, and incredibly satisfying because you grew them yourself. Bonus tip: instead of planting all your seeds at once, sow a new row every 2 weeks. This simple trick can keep fresh beans coming for much of the summer instead of all at once. Plant number 2, Swiss chard. If there were an award for the most underrated vegetable in the garden, Swiss chard would be a serious contender. Most beginners overlook it. They rush toward lettuce, spinach, or kale. Meanwhile, Swiss chard quietly becomes one of the hardest working plants in the garden. And June is an excellent time to plant it. Unlike many cool season greens that struggle once temperatures start rising, Swiss chard keeps going. While lettuce begins bolting and spinach starts fading away, Swiss chard often looks like it's just getting started. That's one reason experienced gardeners love it. The harvests just keep coming. Instead of pulling up the entire plant, you simply harvest the outer leaves and allow the center to continue producing new growth. Week after week, month after month, one healthy planting can provide an incredible amount of food. Another huge advantage is its adaptability. Swiss chard performs surprisingly well in a variety of growing conditions. It loves sunlight, but can also tolerate partial shade better than many vegetables. That's especially important for gardeners working with less than perfect spaces. Maybe your garden only gets morning sun. Maybe a fence blocks part of the light. Maybe you're growing beneath taller plants. Swiss chard usually doesn't mind. And unlike some vegetables that demand constant attention, Swiss chard is relatively forgiving. Miss a watering once in a while. It often bounces back. hot weather arrives, it usually keeps growing. That's why many gardeners consider it one of the most reliable vegetables they grow all year. Plant number 3, radishes. If you're impatient, this might be your favorite vegetable on the list. Because radishes grow fast. Ridiculously fast. In fact, some varieties can be ready to harvest in as little as 3 to 4 weeks. That's almost unheard of in gardening. While other vegetables are still developing their first true leaves, radishes are already preparing for harvest. That's one reason they're perfect for June planting. You don't have to wait months to see results. You get quick wins. And quick wins build confidence, especially for beginners. Many first-time gardeners become discouraged because they plant something that takes months to mature. Radishes solve that problem. They reward you almost immediately. Another reason they deserve a spot in every June garden is flexibility. You can tuck radishes almost anywhere. Between larger vegetables, along garden borders, inside raised beds, even in containers. They don't need much space to perform. And surprisingly, they can tolerate more shade than many people realize. While full sun produces the fastest growth, radishes often grow quite well in locations that receive only a few hours of direct sunlight. In hotter climates, some afternoon shade can actually improve the quality of the roots by preventing excessive heat stress. The result? Crisp, crunchy harvests in a fraction of the time required by most vegetables. Bonus tip: plant a small batch every week instead of all at once. This gives you continuous harvests rather than a huge pile of radishes ready on the same day. Plant number 4, cucumbers. If you've never picked a cucumber straight from the vine, you're missing out. Because homegrown cucumbers are completely different from the ones sitting on grocery store shelves. They're crisp, they're juicy, and when harvested at the perfect time, they're incredibly refreshing. June is one of the best times to plant cucumbers because warm soil dramatically speeds up germination and growth. In fact, cucumbers hate cold soil. Plant them too early and they often sulk for weeks. Plant them in June and they seem to explode out of the ground. That's why experienced gardeners often see better results from June plantings than early spring attempts. And once the vines get going, they grow fast. One day they're tiny seedlings. A few weeks later they're climbing trellises, fences, cages, and anything else they can grab. The best part is how productive they become. A healthy cucumber plant can produce dozens of fruits over the season. That's one reason they're such a favorite among beginner gardeners. The rewards come quickly, and the harvests keep coming. While cucumbers prefer full sun, they can still produce respectable harvests in locations with partial shade, especially if they receive strong morning sunlight. In hotter regions, a little afternoon shade can even help reduce stress during extreme heat. Bonus tip: grow cucumbers vertically whenever possible. You'll save space, improve airflow, and make harvesting much easier. Plant number 5, zucchini. This plant has one speed: fast. Seriously, if you've ever heard gardeners joke about having too much zucchini, they're not exaggerating. A single healthy plant can produce an astonishing amount of food. That's why zucchini has earned a reputation as one of the most productive vegetables a beginner can grow. And June is the perfect time to get started. Warm weather and warm soil are exactly what zucchini loves. Once established, growth becomes almost explosive. Huge leaves appear seemingly overnight. Bright flowers follow. Then suddenly you're harvesting squash every few days. The craziest part? The more frequently you harvest, the more the plant tends to produce. That's why experienced gardeners never let zucchini become oversized. Picking young fruits encourages even more production. Another reason zucchini is beginner-friendly is its resilience. It's not a delicate crop. It grows aggressively and adapts well to many garden situations. And although full sun produces the biggest harvests, zucchini can still perform surprisingly well in spots that receive partial shade during part of the day, especially when summer temperatures become intense. I once knew a gardener who planted 2 zucchini plants thinking it wouldn't be enough. A month later, they were giving zucchini away to neighbors because they couldn't keep up with the harvest. That's the kind of problem gardeners love to have. Bonus tip: harvest zucchini when they're still relatively small. They're more tender, taste better, and encourage the plant to keep producing. Plant number 6, basil. Most people think of basil as just a pizza herb, but gardeners know better. Because basil might be one of the most rewarding plants you can grow. First, it loves June weather. Warm temperatures encourage rapid growth, and once established, basil can quickly become a leafy green powerhouse. Second, it grows beautifully in almost any setting. Garden beds, raised beds, containers, window boxes, patio pots. Basil doesn't need much space to thrive. And because it's harvested continuously, one planting can provide fresh leaves for months. The more you harvest correctly, the bushier and more productive the plant becomes. That's why many gardeners end up with far more basil than they expected. Another reason beginners love basil is how forgiving it can be. It grows quickly, recovers well after harvesting, and doesn't require complicated care routines. And unlike many herbs that demand full sun all day, basil can tolerate light shade, especially in hotter climates where afternoon sun becomes intense. That flexibility makes it perfect for gardeners who don't have ideal growing conditions. The smell alone makes it worth growing. Walk past a healthy basil plant, and you'll immediately understand why it's one of the world's most popular herbs. Fresh basil simply transforms meals. And growing your own means you'll always have some ready to harvest. Bonus tip: pinch off flower buds as soon as they appear. This keeps the plant focused on producing leaves instead of seeds, dramatically increasing your harvest. Plant number 7, sweet potatoes. Most people think of sweet potatoes as a fall crop. What they don't realize is that June is often the perfect time to plant them. That's because sweet potatoes absolutely love heat. In fact, while some vegetables struggle when temperatures start climbing, sweet potatoes seem to get stronger. The hotter it gets, the happier they become. And once those vines start growing, they grow fast. Before long, the plant begins spreading across the garden like a living green carpet. But here's the exciting part. While all that growth is happening above ground, something even better is happening underneath. The plant is quietly building large, nutrient-rich tubers beneath the soil. That's why sweet potatoes have been considered survival crops for generations. They're productive, they're reliable, and they store incredibly well after harvest. Another reason they're perfect for beginners is their toughness. Sweet potatoes aren't delicate plants. Once established, they're surprisingly resilient and often require less attention than many other vegetables. And if you're short on space, don't worry. Sweet potatoes can grow beautifully in raised beds, grow bags, and large containers. Some gardeners harvest pounds of sweet potatoes from a single grow bag. That's an impressive return from a very small space. And while they produce best in full sun, they can still tolerate light shade better than many heat-loving crops. Bonus tip: don't harvest too early. The longer sweet potatoes remain in the ground during the growing season, the larger the tubers usually become. Plant number 8, Malabar spinach. If you're looking for a vegetable that completely ignores summer heat, this is it. Malabar spinach is not a regular spinach. And that's a good thing. Because while normal spinach bolts and dies in hot weather, Malabar spinach thrives when temperatures rise. June is actually one of its best planting windows. Once established, this plant turns into a fast-growing climbing vine that can quickly take over trellises, fences, and vertical spaces. And the more heat it gets, the faster it grows. What makes it especially valuable is its productivity. Instead of harvesting once, you can continuously pick leaves for months from the same plant. Cut it today, it grows back tomorrow. That's the kind of plant gardeners love. It's also one of the few leafy greens that can handle partial shade without completely slowing down. So even if your garden doesn't get perfect sunlight, Malabar spinach still performs well. In small spaces, it becomes even more powerful. A single container with a simple support system can turn into a full wall of edible leaves. Bonus tip: start training the vine upward early. The more vertical space it uses, the more productive it becomes. The biggest mistake many gardeners make is thinking they missed their chance to plant. But as you've seen today, June isn't the end of the gardening season. For many crops, it's just the beginning. Whether you're growing bush beans, Swiss chard, radishes, cucumbers, zucchini, basil, sweet potatoes, or Malabar spinach, warm June weather can help plants establish quickly and produce incredible harvests. And the best part? Many of these crops are beginner-friendly, container-friendly, and even capable of producing in gardens that don't receive perfect sunlight all day. So tell me in the comments, which of these crops are you planting this June? And if you love growing your own food, homesteading, self-sufficiency, and discovering plants that make gardening easier and more productive, subscribe to Primal Gardening, because we've got a lot more coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.